Hi everyone, this is Edward back again with yet more philosophical questions that need answering. This time we are going to look at how will humans as a species go extinct? So a jolly question topic today, but it's actually quite fun perhaps imagining all the terrible things that might happen to us or that we might cause to happen to ourselves. So starting off again, got to sort of split this up into different categories, so maybe it can help us think about how we talk about this. I guess two simple categories we could look at here are the natural disasters type things that are perhaps out of our control or we're not causing at least, right? Then on the flip side, we could say the anthropogenic causes, the human causes, the things that we are doing that are actively creating the destruction of our entire species. So starting off with the natural ones, that's kind of an easier one probably to imagine, right? You've got your super volcanoes, like the one that's apparently under the Yosemite National Park in America. Apparently if this one was to erupt, perhaps this would be a world ender, at least as far as we go. I'm sure some of the lower level types of animals and insects and things will probably make it through fairly intact. So, we're monitoring these types of things. I mean, that's how we know that volcano is even there in Yosemite. And we certainly know where I think all of the other volcanoes around the world are. So we're not going to be necessarily taken by surprise, I guess, from one of these things. Could we stop a supervolcano from erupting? It doesn't seem like we can right now, so that's a little scary, right? If it's going to happen tomorrow, maybe we couldn't stop it. I suppose we could go about preparing for it, right? Perhaps the underground bunker situation, something like that. So at least some of us would make it through, and it perhaps is a survivable event in that case. So scary, but maybe in the near future, we will even have the ability to prevent an eruption like that, or at least to lessen its impact somehow. So not too bad, right? I mean, certainly we see the movies where people are running in terror from these volcanoes, but they probably should have left earlier, right? That's always the thing in the movie. They always stay too long. Another movie-related trope, asteroids, or in a recent movie I just saw, a comet hits the Earth, right? This sort of world-ending scenario again. The comet or the asteroid is so huge, boom, like a nuclear bomb has gone off and it's destroying everything. But even in the movies, right? They go underground and then they come out a little bit later and they rebuild mankind and we continue on. So that, in a way, seems the worst-case scenario there. Yeah, we get hit. Yes, a lot of us die, but not all of us, and we are able to rebuild. So, certainly a terrifying thought that we might get hit by one of these things, but I think we might be able to deal with it as well, right? Not to mention that we have done a fairly good job of mapping all those types of asteroids and things that are floating around in our solar system or outside of it, and the ones that might come close to us. We probably already have the technology necessary to move these things away, particularly given the time that we might be talking about. Maybe it's years or months that we have. So not too scary, right? I mean, it doesn't need to be like that silly movie Armageddon with Bruce Willis, where they land on it and blow it up with an atomic bomb, which doesn't sound that feasible anyway, right? And it didn't go that well for them. But I think realistically, handleable, right? If that's a word, handleable, I'm using it. Well, we're still living in the pandemic situation right now, so who's to say that an even worse virus might pop up in the future and wipe us out? It could, right? Maybe something like Ebola, which I find particularly terrifying given what it does to your insides and you sort of liquefy in some horrible way. If this became airborne and remained as highly infective as it does, could wipe us out perhaps, right? Again, this is sort of looking at it from the science versus the movie type thing. we've seen how quickly science has operated with the current pandemic, and especially with the new vaccines that are available, the mRNA vaccine in particular, right? This is a whole new technology and appears to be able to be sort of retooled very quickly, right? So if the virus adapts or changes, we can easily come up with something new. I know a lot of people find this technology perhaps a little bit worrying, but I think that's mainly it is because they are not fully understanding the science behind it, right? Anything new is scary in that sense, I guess. But other than those people, right, I'm taking the vaccine when I get the chance. So, good for me, bad for them. So, could the virus wipe us out? It seems strange. We haven't seen anything like that recently, right? We haven't even perhaps identified any particular virus that has that ability. I mean, if there was one, why haven't we already seen it? I mean, why hasn't it killed us, right? So, not too afraid of this one, right? Certainly we're going to have pandemics in the future, or at least epidemics. But will they spread in the way they are in the past? Is it going to be another Black Death? Probably not, right? I think we've got reasonably scared, or perhaps properly scared, from the current virus we're dealing with, good old coronavirus. So perhaps this has been a blessing in disguise, right? It's prepared us for the possible negative future that might arise. I was debating where to put this category, or what category to put this in. Aliens, right? I guess that's natural, right? Unless it's sort of an alien robot species, which I guess is not natural, necessarily at least. So yeah, aliens could come and they could wipe us out. Maybe they're just evil aliens, just a bunch of assholes who go around blowing stuff up, like in that movie Independence Day, right? Those aliens are just awful, awful people, if you want to call them people. And we were unfortunate to get in their path, right? Or alternatively, perhaps the alien species is so advanced, they just view us as ants or something. They don't even realize we're here. They don't care. And they just blow up our planet or something, or who knows what, right? Could be, right? We've certainly seen lots of movies where this happens, although, again, we often survive in the movies. It's still somewhat rare to see those get totally wiped out, but it happens. Is there a chance that the aliens in the future would be friendly? I suppose, right? I mean, if they've developed their society in a way to coordinate with each other, perhaps that means that they are more open to working and coordinating and perhaps teaching or whatever with other species. We, I think, can look at ourselves and say, well, as we've developed, we've gone from sort of, treating animals like crap to treating them slightly better. And there's probably a ways to go there, but we have had probably steady improvement over time. So perhaps the alien species would be the same there. Again, though, if they see us as something totally different or like a very low level species, perhaps they just don't care what happens to us and maybe wipe us out then, not in some sort of malicious way, but as sort of brushing the ants off of the picnic table way. Scary. And I would assume if the aliens are here, they have better technology than us. So in this case, our technology is probably not getting us out of this situation. That's unlike the movies like Independence Day, where we sort of hack the alien spacecraft or some silly thing like that. Though we are certainly innovative, so I don't want to count us out, but you would assume the alien species is far advanced. So, okay, that one's scary, but since we don't know if there's any aliens actually out there, perhaps this is a very, very low percentage type of situation. And, well, speaking of percentages and things, there's another argument that I guess you can put in the natural ones as well, which is sometimes called the Doomsday Argument, which is quite complicated. So I'm not going to go too into depth in this one, mainly because I'm still struggling to fully understand what it's saying. But basically, it's making a statistical prediction about the lifespan of our species, right? And they're saying, if you look at the numbers and do some analysis, the chances are that you're somewhere in the middle of that lifespan, Like on average, you should be in the middle. If we just took a random sampling, you should be in the middle of the lifespan. So if humans have been around for like 200,000 years, then we could expect perhaps another 200,000 years, right? Or maybe a wider range, depending on how you count it. Right? So statistical analysis being used to predict our lifespan as a species. It sounds tempting, right? Oh, we can sort of run the numbers in advance and know, when is the final day. Of course, it's not that exact, but sounds plausible, I guess. But it seems also sort of strange, right? The longer we sort of have been existing so far, like every day seems to expand the range of the lifespan, right? If we're always in the middle, and the middle keeps getting sort of further and further away from the initial starting point, all it seems to prove is, yes, right? If we took a random sampling, you would be in the middle, perhaps. But the middle can be bigger and bigger, simply by us not dying yet. So this one is confusing, I would say, but interesting that we could even sort of think about our lifespan in that way. At the very least, it could be something that could push us to sort of advance our own technology or look for ways to expand it, right? Because I think it is hard to put in well, I suppose you could say the unpredictability of our human species, right? It's very hard to say what we will be able to do in the future. And I don't think you can really put that into the numbers. Perhaps if you're using the same analysis for, I don't know, like cats or dogs or something, this would make more sense, right? Okay, we can just do the backtracking, counting, and then say you're in the middle or whatever. But for humans, I think we're quite different, right? So you can't factor in that unpredictability necessarily. Okay, well, enough of those natural ones. Let's move on to the human ones. And to me, these ones probably seem more likely, right? Because, we're very good about coming up with very dangerous things, very exciting things perhaps, but very dangerous things as well. And sometimes we're not quite ready for the power we have discovered. All right, well, war, of course, is the one that always pops up. War just in general, right? Maybe we just have a massive world war, and it, just destroys everyone. It's just a war that goes on until the last person dies. Or we're using some type of advanced weaponry, perhaps not even that much more advanced than we have now, right? Biological weapons, nuclear weapons. So nuclear weapons already exist, and we have more than enough to probably kill all of us. Again, perhaps like the supervolcano situation, though, I think there are going to be some survivors after that war simply because they would have been already in the underground bunker, right? So basically, this is coming down to how good are our underground bunkers, or how good is your bunker in your backyard? Will it keep you alive for the next, couple years as we ride out that nuclear winter? So jolly thoughts there. Biological war, same sort of thing, right? We create some disease, it spreads all over the world, kills us all. Even if it's more sort of targeted in the people it's going after, you would have to assume our enemies would create a similar virus that comes after us. So this would be basically, again, a race to the underground bunker, and hoping that you can ride it out until you either come up with a cure or the virus perhaps dies by itself, depending on how it works. So, yep, war is a threat. And even though, there's many books out saying we've become more peaceful over time, all it takes is one of these big wars, perhaps, to really wipe us out, right? We've never had a nuclear war before. Even if we haven't had a war for a while, like a global war for a while, have that nuclear war, ooh, that's bad, right? Certainly living here in Asia, right? Watching what's happening with China, and sitting here in little Taiwan as the Chinese are flying their airplanes around the island. This sometimes feels like a very real threat, at least locally, right? If not globally. But you could imagine a war starting in this sort of situation, right? China tries to take Taiwan back. America comes to our rescue. Oh, thank you, America. And China and America start fighting each other, and boom, the whole world starts fighting, perhaps. Or the Americans and the Chinese just use their nuclear weapons and destroy us all anyway. So, happy thoughts. But again, I think we do perhaps underestimate the desire for peace in these countries as well, right? That even in the war situations that they are perhaps playing through in their heads, it is not getting to that nuclear war level necessarily, right? At least they are definitely hoping it isn't. These are, two large countries that are very interdependent with each other. So you would have to hope, right, that we're smart enough now not to do this. But you can't guarantee it, right? The only thing that might save us is once we start using even a little bit of these weapons, we're sort of shocked by our stupidity and stop. But will it wipe us all out? I can't think so, right? Because neither side really wants to lose totally. We all want to keep on living, so perhaps we can get to that edge and then not step over into the abyss. But again, even if we did, underground bunkers. That's the word of the day, underground bunker. Well, if you're Greta Thunberg, climate change. Yes, we are changing the climate, and it's not changing for the better, it would seem, right? We've got more droughts, worse storms, flooding, stronger typhoons and hurricanes and big tornadoes, and you name it, we've got it. So it's certainly getting more exciting, I guess, but not particularly better. Although perhaps, if you live in Scotland, you can start growing grapes for wine pretty soon. So that's pretty good for them, I suppose. But less good for France, right? So I suppose we all need to start preparing for the Scottish version of a nice Cabernet. Sounds good. Okay. Could we change the planet enough to kill us all? We could certainly change it enough to kill a lot of us, right? You hear about these scenarios of what they might call like ecological collapse, where each species that relies on another species sort of dies away, and it comes all the way up to us, right? And we suddenly realize, oh, we don't have any food anymore. All the animals are dead, or all the plants are dead. If that's really true, that we've killed everything, then of course we die. Could we stop that from happening? Seems like we could, right? Perhaps the animal part is slightly more difficult, but I imagine it's solvable. And the plant part seems easier. Even if the plant somehow, was missing something, we could probably make it ourselves and keep the plants safe, right? We already do that to a certain extent with greenhouses and things. But food shortages, famine, I think that is a definite danger. But those aren't necessarily species-ending dangers, right? They're just highly unpleasant, and we probably should be working on preventing that. So, yeah, I'm not too worried about that one. Killing us all. I'm certainly worried about the changes it's having. But we've all got Greta to shout at us and look grumpy. So at least that keeps it in our minds on a daily basis. And even Joe Biden, the old man in America, he's talking about fixing climate change, having a green economy, all that stuff. So if the Americans are doing it, then probably not that much of a worry. Well, sort of a related issue with that, there's sort of, in the history at least, there's sort of been a constant drumbeat about the fear of overpopulation. And that would kind of fit into maybe the ecological collapse thing as well, right? We just run out of food because we can't feed enough people. We've killed all the animals because we couldn't feed the people, or blah, 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 couldn't feed the people. Or, I suppose the pollution that comes from all these people and trying to feed all those people. So that's not great. But would it kill all of us? Probably not. Not by itself, right? I mean, that, in a way, sort of nature perhaps fixing itself or fixing us for ourselves. Simply saying, you can't have this many people, you go down to this many people, you'll be all right again. So, not a big worry, that one. And it's one of those things that's sort of constantly overblown, right? And perhaps, in fact, we're going in the opposite direction now anyway, right? More and more countries have very low birth rates, far below the replacement level. Even here in Taiwan, right? They're trying to do government campaigns to get people to go to dating, speed dating run by the government. Please have a baby is basically what they're saying. And people aren't doing it in every sense of the word. Okay, well, biotech, that's a big one, right? Who knows what we might create in our laboratories? Some horrible disease, it's already been discussed many places with the coronavirus, but people really do work on viruses, and they play around with them as a way of understanding them better. But they do actually sometimes create, a more lethal or more infective type of virus, right? Because they're just trying to understand it. And then they go and they put it on the internet, so all the other scientists can see the information. Oh, that's very interesting. How it kills more people probably, and they're writing it down, and right? That's good for the scientists, as long as we can trust them, right? But this information is highly dangerous, right? And it seems that it's getting easier and easier for people just like you and me, right? Maybe you are smarter than me, so it's even easier for you. But we could order the sort of basic elements that we need to start creating our own viruses at home. And the information on how to do it is pretty open on the internet. So there is here certainly the danger of like that lone wolf, lone madman scenario, cooking up the virus in his basement and then spreading it over the world. The issue here, I suppose the worry here is basically the same as just the natural virus, though, right? Why would the man-made virus necessarily be worse than anything else? Perhaps it spreads so quickly we couldn't stop it. But yeah, even with our interconnected world right now, there would still be places that would probably be able to shut down before the virus ever made it there, right? I think of that movie 12 Monkeys. The guy in that movie does essentially this. He creates a virus and then he goes around the world spreading it. But he just goes to like sort of key cities. It's not like he's going to like every island in the world and spreading this virus. So certainly it would knock out a lot of the population. In like the worst case scenario, something like sort of spread like wildfire across the world in like days. But it couldn't spread everywhere, right? There's just certain places that don't have that much interaction with other countries or other islands even, right? So it's possible they could live on and survive, right? This is, in the worst case, this is sort of very low-level survival. And of course, there's always the underground bunker scenario, right? There's always somebody in the underground bunker, at the very least, they need to sort of sweep the floors every so often. So those guys are safe by sort of definition, right? No one goes into the underground bunker after them. So if you're lucky enough to win the underground bunker lottery on that day, good for you. Let's see. Well, something that kind of relates to biotech is the what we call self-replicating nanobots, right? Or I suppose this could be sort of self-replicating bioorganisms that we have created in some sense, right? And the most sort of famous sort of danger story here is what's called the gray goo scenario. Basically, we've created some nanobots, whatever, and they use the material, whatever material that is around them, to make more of themselves. And so they turn the whole world or the whole universe into themselves, right? There's nothing left except for these nanobots. This sounds terrifying, right? And from what I've read, it sounds feasible to a certain extent, right? That we could create this type of nanobot, I guess. So certainly if anyone's thinking of doing this, they would have to put in some safeguards for sure. Could we defeat the nanobots? I suppose, right, we could, because in most scenarios I see, they don't need to have any sort of strategy or thinking, right? It's just simply make more of you or make more of whatever you're supposed to be making. So it is a danger, because I suppose, depending on how you program them, you could say anything that's made out of matter can be made into more of you, or more of whatever you're making. So dangerous, I suppose, right? And especially if the sort of growth rate, this self-replication rate, is exponential, right? 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. That would be bad, right? Because very hard to stop them after a certain time. Just by definition, they would suddenly appear to be, a few of them, and then suddenly they're everywhere. But why would you create this, I guess, right? I suppose if you were creating it, you would already have put in the safeguards. Could the safeguards be taken out? I suppose that depends how they were put in the first place. If they're somehow essential to the working of the nanobot, then no, right? Are these easy to create? As far as I know, no, they're not easy to create. That's why we don't have any. In the future, could they get easier? Maybe, right? Could it be where you can make them in your own house? Maybe. If that's true, we certainly need to be coming up with some ideas about how we can control that technology. We already have dangerous things we could have in our home, at least in America, right? You can get a gun and things, but we do have some regulation around that. Why not have regulation around these things? And I suppose we would always have to have perhaps some type of nanobot fighting force, which is perhaps just other nanobots, that would be ready to go in this type of situation, right? So there are ways we could deal with it. This one is scary, though, for sure. Let's see, what else? Well, AI, of course, right? AI, that's the big one. And that is certainly one that we are actively working towards, right? All sorts of people are trying to create AI, particularly what's often called like AGI, artificial general intelligence, basically like a human mind that can then improve itself and then quickly surpass us in every way. Here, right, in a way, it's a little bit like the alien issue. Is it a malevolent AI? Will it be kind to us, or will it just simply ignore us? It might just want to build itself bigger, and so it destroys us just to get us out of the way, and it can build it into something else. Certainly dangerous, right? And again, this is something that you hope the people who are really working on this are thinking deeply about, and really thinking about ways to limit the sort of damage. Unfortunately, I think a lot of them are not doing this, right? There's a sort of a utopian feeling around all of this that relates to things like what's called the singularity, which is essentially where maybe we merge with the AI or something, and we sort of transcend our human bodies, and we become a new species, right? Sort of post-humanism or transhumanism. That's very utopian, and also a bit vague, right? I'm not sure what it actually means to do any of those things, and what we would do after it happened. The AI, at the very least, would probably want to be in charge, right? Why would it let us order it around? And I think there's probably no way we could stop it, right? It's always going to get out if it is this sort of AGI, although maybe even a lower level AI could sort of escape and hurt us in some way. Or scientists might just create a evil AI, right? Who knows why they would do it? Maybe it's a war, right? And they're going to have it attack the other people, the enemies. But, as things always do, it goes wrong, right? Maybe it attacked them and then turned around and attacked everyone else, right? So a lot of danger here, right? But again, this is not unsolvable, I think, right? We can come up with ways to deal with this. And we're certainly not in that moment right now. So there is hope, I think. What else? Time is going by very fast today. Well, there's one other category that I was thinking of, actually, which would be, maybe call it philosophical. Because there's I don't want to say like a growing number of people, but there's certainly quite a few people who are alive now and who have been in the past, who I guess we can say are just pessimistic about life, right? That they think that being alive is just not worth it, right? Being dead, or perhaps non-existence, better way of saying it, non-existence is better than existence. So certainly these people would never have children, right? Because why would you bring a child into something that is worse than where they were before, right? When they didn't exist, that was better for the child. And you brought them into a world that's for the pain and suffering, right? And these people can certainly make you feel very depressed if you read them. They can prove in a way quite forcefully that yes, there is a lot of pain in your life and you seem to hang on to the pain more. The pain lasts longer than the happiness in your life, perhaps. That perhaps we as humans are somehow evolutionarily designed to focus on the pain. Pretty depressing. And so the danger here would be if somehow this philosophy spread, right? Not just in one or two people, but large percentages of the populations in every country, right? If that was true, what might those people choose to do at that point, right? They might just say, hey, okay, we're done. We're not having children. See you later. And the rest of us who choose to stay say, oh, okay, see you guys. And then, hey, cheaper housing for the rest of us. That's one scenario. Of course, the other scenario is those pessimistic people say, we're going to destroy everyone. So they create viruses, they have a nuclear war, they do all sorts of things to try and wipe us all out. Excuse me. So they are going to take active measures to bring about what they believe is the best outcome for humanity, right? They're going to end the pain and suffering by essentially doing a mass suicide for the entire species. That would be an interesting way to go, I guess, right? Fairly depressing. And I just can't believe that a large enough percentage of people would want to do that. There is, of course, the danger that these types of people may gain control of some of the other technologies that I discussed and might actively try to use those anyway to bring about that situation. It's a bit selfish, right? And certainly the philosophers who back this don't necessarily, I think, espouse the idea that they should kill other people, simply that they perhaps wish that they hadn't been born, or are looking forward to death, or are just happy being somewhat depressing with their friends. So that one's a sad one. Hopefully that one doesn't happen. That one just seems, sort of like, what's the poem? This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper. That's definitely a whimper, right? We just gave up and sort of walked ourselves off the stage. Pretty useless. Come on, humanity. At least blow ourselves up in a big war or something. Or, we created AI at least. And say, we created that at least. It killed us, but hey, you didn't build it. Okay. Well, sticking with the depressing things for a minute longer, there's a new book out. Well, it's supposed to out a year ago now. Interesting book called The Precipice. Full title, The Precipice, Existential Risk and the Future of Humanity, by this guy, Toby Ord, who's an interesting guy. And he actually makes a prediction as well, that he says, the likelihood of human extinction this century is about 1 in 6. Okay, so this sounds like we're playing Russian roulette with our species. What's he basing it on? Well, he's basing it on all the things we just discussed. He's saying there's a high likelihood that these things are going to get out of control. But he does also seem to be basing this on the fact that we will be dealing with these problems as we are now with no new knowledge, no new technology, nothing like that. So he's also a little bit like that Doomsday Scenario situation I talked before, that doesn't seem to be allowing for the innovation, the progress that humans seem to always be making. So he's being very pessimistic, right? But in a different sense than the people who wanted to destroy the world. He just simply doesn't seem to have any belief in the, doesn't have any belief in humanity, I guess, right? That we will not be able to overcome it. Which seems strange if you look back into the past. We've certainly had a lot of situations that perhaps took us very close to that kind of total destruction, and we were able to walk it back. Right? We've had 2 world wars. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis. We've had, the Cold War, where in general just pointing all those missiles at each other, and we didn't blow ourselves up, right? We got to the edge maybe, but we didn't, and we did it again and again and again, right? And even if you go back further in the past, there was certainly times where we might have destroyed us all. We had a smaller species, and there were, constant wars. So in that sense, you could say we were putting humanity at risk even, thousands of years ago. But we made it through. We seem to always make it through. So why are we suddenly saying that we won't, right? You certainly have to admit that some of the dangers we're facing now are new and are very worrying, like AI. But again, that is something that we are in charge of and how we progress. And also we are learning more as we go along. We're certainly thinking about it right now. Even this guy, Toby Ord, he's thinking it through. But I guess he's also assuming that we will not take his advice about such things like AI, right? If we did, would we still only have a 1 in 6 chance, or would it go up, right? I know he does address these types of things in the book, but in just a simplistic way, this is kind of what he's saying, right? So where do I sit in all this? Well, I tend towards the more optimistic side. Certainly I'm pessimistic in the idea that will we create more dangerous things in the world? Of course we will. Of course we will. That's just who we are as a species. And particularly if you tell us don't do it, we're going to do it even quicker, right? So AI, you say, don't do it, we're going to do it, right? Or someone's going to say, well, if we don't do it, the Chinese will do it. So got to do it. But that doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to destroy ourselves either, right? Do I believe in the utopian ideas of something like the singularity? That doesn't seem very believable. Well, in part because it doesn't sound very utopian to me, perhaps, right? I want more information about what we're signing up for there with this merging with technology thing. Sounds good in theory, could be horrific in practice, depending on how we do it. So, in conclusion, optimistic about the future because of our ability to innovate and learn new knowledge. And hey, I believe in humanity. I'm a fan of man, said the devil in Devil's Advocate. Yes. Well, yeah. How will humans as a species go extinct? If you made me choose, of course it's AI. It's going to be AI. But I think we will not be defeated by such terrible things. Okay, so that's me done for today. Let me know if you guys have any questions, or if you think I'm crazy and you strongly disagree with everything I said. You can send me a message, or just like and subscribe. That annoying phrase that everyone says these days. And I will talk to you guys next time.